Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Fear of the Vrax Marauders. The Vrax fleet decloaked above the serene colony world of Tessa Prime, their massive dreadnoughts blotting out the twin suns. For the inhabitants, it was as if night had fallen in an instant. Alarm sirens blared, and the planet's modest defense grid activated in a desperate attempt to repel the invaders. Energy bolts from surface-mounted cannons shot into the heavens, but the Vrax ships remained untouched, their shields absorbing the attacks effortlessly. Within minutes, the orbital defense stations were vaporized, reduced to silent fireballs that lit up the atmosphere. On the ground, panic erupted. Families clutched their children and fled into underground shelters, but it was futile. The Vrax had no mercy. As massive troop transports descended, their soldiers, a nightmarish combination of advanced cybernetics and cruel biological engineering, marched through the streets. Cities burned as the Vrax looted resources, enslaved entire populations, and obliterated anything they deemed unnecessary. By the end of the day, Tessa Prime was a smoldering ruin, its once thriving civilization reduced to ash and silence. The galaxy had seen this horror too many times before. For centuries, the Vrax Marauders had been an unstoppable menace, preying on the weak and the strong alike. Their advanced cloaking technology allowed them to strike without warning and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. No planet was safe, no species beyond their reach. The galactic community was paralyzed by fear. Once proud alliances crumbled, their trust eroded by decades of Vrax terror. Military fleets that once patrolled the galaxy's trade routes were scattered, unwilling to risk open confrontation. Trade lanes were abandoned. Entire regions of space left untraveled as planets isolated themselves in the hope of escaping the Vrax's notice. In the halls of the Galactic Council, a minor diplomat from the Andran Confederacy relayed a chilling account. An entire star system, the Mezen cluster, had been erased from the galactic maps overnight. Not a single transmission, the diplomat whispered, trembling. Not a single distress call. Just silence. And then nothing. The room fell into stunned silence. Everyone knew the Vrax were behind it, but no one dared speak it aloud. But the Vrax were not content to terrorize the familiar regions of space. They sought new conquests, new victims. Their long-range probes discovered Earth, an isolated world on the fringes of the galactic map. Emboldened by their unchecked success, the Vrax leadership dismissed humanity as nothing more than an upstart, primitive species. They have no fleets, no colonies, no allies, sneered one Vrax commander as he reviewed Earth's limited interstellar presence. A single dreadnought will suffice to bring them to their knees. The Vrax king himself declared Earth a target, promising to add humanity to the ever-growing list of species enslaved under their rule. When news of the Vrax's plans reached Earth, galactic officials pleaded with humanity to surrender. Resistance will only provoke them, they warned. You cannot possibly survive, but humanity refused to bow. Leaders from across Earth's nations stood united, defiant in the face of annihilation. Against a fleet of thousands, the galaxy would later remember, Earth sent one ship, humanity's answer. At first glance, the Phantom appeared underwhelming. Its hull was matte black, marked with what seemed like battle scars, and its overall shape was reminiscent of an outdated shuttle. To the untrained eye, it was a relic unfit for combat, a desperate gamble by a doomed species. But appearances were deceiving. Beneath the unassuming exterior lay the pinnacle of human ingenuity. The Phantom was a stealth warship, a marvel of advanced technology. Its quantum cloaking system wasn't just an improvement on traditional invisibility. It was revolutionary. Unlike the Vrax's cloaking, which masked visual and energy signatures, the Phantom could vanish from every known sensor system in the galaxy. It became a ghost, untraceable to radar, heat scans, or even quantum particle detectors. To an outside observer, it didn't exist at all. The Phantom's design extended beyond its cloaking. Its hull was coated with adaptive material that absorbed energy and redirected it, making the ship almost impervious to standard weapons. Within its seemingly small frame were compartments for specialized drones, EMP devices, and an arsenal of tools meant not for direct combat, but for disruption. The Phantom wasn't built to fight fleets. It was built to dismantle them. Aboard this vessel was a crew of elite operatives, their identities shrouded in secrecy. They were known only by their designations: engineer, pilot, strategist, saboteur. These individuals represented the pinnacle of human expertise, excelling in hacking, tactical sabotage, and covert operations. Their faces were hidden, even from each other, their communications streamlined through the ship's AI. The Phantom's AI, affectionately dubbed the Ghost in the Machine, was the ship's true commander. More than just a program, it was sentient, capable of learning and adapting in real time. The Ghost analyzed every detail, calculated probabilities, and executed strategies with surgical precision. It was ruthless, pragmatic, and utterly loyal to humanity's cause. The crew and AI shared one mission: to take the fight to the Vrax. Humanity's leaders knew they couldn't win a direct confrontation. The Vrax fleet was too vast, too powerful. Instead, they opted for psychological warfare. The goal was simple: infiltrate, sabotage, and sow chaos among the Vrax ranks. By turning the Vrax against each other, humanity hoped to weaken the invincible foe. The Phantom's first mission began with the Vrax raiding fleet preparing to launch a strike on a neighboring star system. Under the cover of its quantum cloaking, the Phantom slipped undetected into the fleet's formation. The Ghost in the Machine worked quickly, hacking into the Vrax communication network. False intelligence was planted. One Vrax ship was flagged as a traitor transmitting coordinates to an enemy faction. Chaos erupted within the fleet. A Vrax captain, distrustful by nature, ordered his ship to fire on the traitor before it could escape. The targeted ship retaliated, and within moments, the two vessels were locked in combat. Other Vrax ships, confused by the sudden betrayal, hesitated, giving the Phantom ample time to retreat. By the time the skirmish ended, both Vrax ships were crippled, their crews either dead or too injured to continue the fight. The Phantom had struck its first blow, and no one in the Vrax fleet knew what had happened. The stage was set for the Ghost to haunt the galaxy's most feared predators, turning fear against them. As the Phantom continued its campaign of sabotage, the Vrax began to realize they were facing something far more dangerous than a single warship. Each strike was calculated, precise, and left no trace of its origin, save for the mounting chaos that followed. The Phantom was not merely engaging in typical guerrilla warfare. It was a ghost haunting the edges of the Vrax fleet, dismantling them from within. One of its earliest targets was the Vrax's supply chain. The Marauders were known for their brutal raids, but they required constant resupply of munitions, fuel, and food to maintain their vast war machine. Using its cloaking system, the Phantom infiltrated supply depots across the galaxy, planting covert sabotage devices. Supplies meant for a major raid were deliberately tampered with, rendering entire convoys useless. Fuel tanks exploded in spectacular fashion, and weapons shipments vanished, causing widespread shortages in the Vrax fleet. Next, the Phantom turned its attention to the Vrax ships themselves. Its stealth technology allowed it to sneak undetected into the heart of enemy fleets, planting explosive devices on the hulls of cloaked ships. These ships, once thought to be the epitome of the Vrax's invincibility, would suddenly detonate in mid-flight, creating panic and confusion. One by one, the Marauders' most feared vessels were reduced to floating debris, their crews obliterated in an instant. Perhaps the most devastating blow was delivered through the Phantom's infiltration of Vrax communication networks. Using advanced hacking techniques, it spread misinformation throughout the fleet. False orders were broadcast, sending Vrax ships into wild goose chases across the galaxy. Fake messages accusing rival commanders of treason sowed discord and mistrust. The Vrax, once unified by their bloodlust and merciless hierarchy, began to unravel from within. As the Phantom's campaign continued, The effects of its operations became more evident. The Vrax crews, hardened by years of violence and conquest, began to question their leaders. Paranoia, once a mere whisper, grew into a deafening roar. A Vrax captain accused a rival ship of withholding critical supplies, claiming it had made a secret pact with the enemy. The accusation led to a deadly skirmish, with both ships firing on each other in a frenzy. The battle left them crippled, and the Vrax leadership struggled to explain the incident. But this was only the beginning. As misinformation spread, and the first few ships vanished, the whispers began. The ghost ship. At first, it was only a rumor, a fantastical tale among the Vrax warriors to explain the sudden disappearances of their comrades. But as the phantom struck again and again, the stories became more sinister. Ships would vanish without a trace, leaving only debris and corpses behind. No signs of a battle, no warning shots, only death and silence. The Marauders, once the galaxy's apex predators, were now terrified of an invisible foe that could strike anywhere and vanish before retaliation. The fear began to seep into every corner of the Vrax fleet. Even the most seasoned warriors, who had once charged into battle without hesitation, now hesitated. The Phantom's reputation as a ghostly harbinger of death spread like wildfire, and morale within the Vrax ranks plummeted. Whispers of a ship that could strike without warning, that could never be caught, only fueled their terror. The Phantom's greatest test came when it narrowly escaped a Vrax ambush. The Marauders, learning from their previous mistakes, laid a trap, using false readings and decoys to bait the Phantom into the open. For a brief moment, it seemed that the ship would be overwhelmed. But the ship's AI, ever adaptive and calculating, saw through the ruse. Using the debris field of a recently destroyed colony as cover, the Phantom activated its cloaking and vanished, slipping through the ambush with barely a scratch. The Vrax, in their frustration, fired blindly at the wreckage, only to watch in disbelief as the Phantom melted away into the stars. But this close call raised the stakes. It was clear that the Vrax were starting to adapt, learning from their failures. The Phantom was not invincible, and every mission brought it closer to the razor's edge between success and failure. Amidst the growing chaos, the Phantom's greatest triumph occurred. The ship planted a series of false communications that framed a prominent Vrax warlord for treason. The warlord, once a leader among the Marauders, was accused of plotting with the enemy to betray the Vrax. The ensuing power struggle weakened the entire Vrax command structure, as rival factions vied for control. Infighting paralyzed their leadership, and for the first time in centuries, the once unified Vrax fleet was fractured. The Phantom had turned the Vrax's own fear into their greatest weapon, and in doing so, it had begun to shatter their empire from within. The galaxy's terror of the Marauders was slowly being replaced by something far more dangerous: distrust and confusion. The hunter becomes the hunted. The Phantom had played its hand masterfully, dismantling the Vrax Marauder empire piece by piece. But the time for subtle sabotage was nearing its end. The ship's AI, ever calculating, devised a final gambit, one that would strike at the heart of the Vrax leadership. It planted false evidence in the Vrax communication network, suggesting a hidden treasure trove of invaluable resources on a distant, uncharted planet. The Vrax king, desperate to reassert his crumbling control over his empire and restore the Marauders' dominance, took the bait without hesitation. The Vrax flagship, the Iron Tyrant, a gargantuan ship that symbolized the very power of the Vrax, was sent to claim the riches. The king himself led the charge, confident that this would be the blow that would crush humanity's rebellion and re-establish the Vrax as the galaxy's supreme force. But what the Vrax didn't know was that this would be their undoing. As the Iron Tyrant entered the system, the Phantom was already waiting. Using its quantum cloaking, the Phantom shadowed the flagship, moving with eerie silence through the void. The Phantom's AI executed its plan with precision, disabling the Vrax flagship's cloaking field from a distance, exposing it to the open space. What the Vrax thought was a simple treasure hunt quickly turned into a nightmare. In a coordinated strike, The Phantom activated its communications to call upon the nearby freed colonies, worlds once ravaged by the Vrax, but now rising up under the banner of humanity's defiance. Ships, equipped with the knowledge and inspiration gleaned from the Phantom's campaign, surged from hidden positions and attacked the vulnerable flagship. The Vrax King's flagship, the symbol of their might, was now surrounded. Desperate, the Vrax tried to retaliate, but the Phantom launched its final weapon, a powerful EMP that slammed into the Iron Tyrant. The ship's systems faltered, its energy shields dropped, and the once mighty vessel became a sitting target. The Iron Tyrant was defenseless. The freed colonies, emboldened by the Phantom's success, tore into the flagship, crippling it beyond repair. The fall of the Vrax King was a signal for the collapse of their entire empire. With their leadership destroyed and their fleets in disarray, the marauders scattered, unable to reorganize or fight back. They had been hunted by the very species they once enslaved. The galaxy, once paralyzed by their terror, now watched as the Vrax Empire dissolved into nothingness. Humanity, against all odds, had triumphed. The Phantom was no longer just a warship. It had become a legend. Whispers of the unseen predator spread across the galaxy. The Marauders' fear of an invisible, deadly force that could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast them was now a symbol of human ingenuity and courage. In the void, the ghosts are real, the galaxy would say in hushed tones, and they fight for humanity